Hello everyone who wants to learn Turkish. Welcome to our first lesson. Today in our lesson we will talk about Turks, Turkey, Turkic peoples, and the Turkish language. If you're ready, let's start.
The official language of the Turkish Republic, Türkiye Cumhuriyeti, is called Turks in Turkish and is the standardized form of a dialect, was originally spoken and written in the former capital of the Ottoman Empire, Istanbul. It is estimated that Turkish is nowadays the mother tongue of about 85–90% of the population, the size of which was around 70 million in 2005, rising to 78 million in 2015, and likely to exceed 83 million in 2020. Other languages in Turkey currently learned as a first language are predominantly Kurdish, Kermenci, and Zaza, Caucasian languages, and languages of Semitic origin. It particularly forms of Arabic. Outside Turkey proper, Turkish is spoken on Cyprus, and there are rather sizable groups of speakers on the Balkan Peninsula and in northwestern Europe. In the 11th century, Asia Minor was invaded by Turkic tribes belonging to the Oghuz group, and these people brought along Islam as their creed, a nomadic economy, and a language from the east. Once these tribes had settled and mixed with the local population on whom they imposed their language and culture, a political military power came into existence, first with Bursa but after 1453 with Istanbul as its center. This power was called the Ottoman Empire, so named after its founder Othman. Long before the siege and conquest of Constantinople, now Istanbul, the empire had enlarged its territory in several directions. For instance, it included large swathes of the Balkan Peninsula and Greece, and by the end of the 13th century the language spoken by the Ottoman Turks had become the language of the administration and of the local literature. The Ottoman language followed its own course of development but was further influenced by Arabic and Persian, particularly after the second half of the 15th century. Not only were words for new concepts copied from these languages, but also entire grammatical structures, which were as a matter of fact Fremkörper for Turkic languages. At the same time, however, the language of the illiterate masses, known as Turkey or Turks, was to a much lesser degree influenced by foreign elements. Compared to the administrative and legal language, Ottoman, this vernacular must have had a much more natural development since its introduction in the region. Thus, after some 700 years in the region which is now Turkey, both linguistic varieties can be considered the foreigners of modern Standard Turkish. After the First World War, the Ottoman Empire came to an end. The Sultan was deposed, the Caliphate was abolished, and in 1923 the Turkish Republic was founded. This not only led to great political and economical reforms, but also initiatives were taken to modernize the language. Turkish of before 1928-9 is usually referred to as Ottoman, because during these years the Arabic script was replaced by a Latin alphabet in order to create a writing system based on scientific principles. This reform was one of the first attempts to modernize the language and to eliminate the gap between officialese and the language of the people, 90% of whom was illiterate and without education. Already in the mid-19th century, it was claimed that the Arabic system was not suitable for the representation of the sounds of Turkish. One of the problems with Ottoman texts indeed originates from the fact that the spelling gives no clue to the pronunciation of vowels, for the simple reason that these were not written. A comparable imperfect spelling system is that of English, which in many cases gives no clue either for how a word should be pronounced. rather than adapting the Arabic alphabet to local usage as the Uyghurs did in 1937 and 1983 for their own language. The decision was made on political and ideological grounds to break with the past and to opt for a series of radical changes. Not only was a new alphabet introduced, but the language was also to be purified from Persian and Arabic elements, which were replaced with real Turkish equivalents. Such words were not only en masse fabricated, but also copied from dialects and other languages related to Turkish. This ideology-inspired movement since 1932 under the Directorate of Türk Dil Kurumu (TDK) Turkish Language Society is known as the language reform and can be regarded as a great success, supported by better forms of education and undoubtedly by the influence of modern mass media. This, however, has consequences, of which the following are the most important. First, the Ottoman language is nowadays a foreign language, and second, the gap between modern Standard Turkish and related languages in countries of the former Soviet Union has become much wider than was already the case as the result of 1,000 years of separate development, even to the point that mutual intelligibility is extremely low and sometimes out of the question. Now, we will tell about Turkic languages and people. The term Turkic works the same way. It designates a large family of languages which have in the course of more than 10 centuries developed from ancient Turkic, the language which presumably existed around the 6th century in the era of the Great Turkic Confederations. At a certain point the political unity of the tribal relations ceased to exist, and at different moments and for different reasons, the ancestors of the later Turkic peoples started to wander to all quarters of the Eurasian world. In the course of time several languages came into existence which can now be grouped in 4 main branches: Oghuz, Kipchak, Siberian, and Karluk. The languages of the Oghuz and Kipchak groups are found in the west. Those of the Oghuz group eventually ended up in Iran and Anatolia, and those of the Kipchak group north of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. The Siberian group is represented in the northeast and the Karluk group in the southeast, Turkestan. Nowadays there are several written Turkic languages, which are geographically distributed as follows. The Oghuz languages are Turkish, Aghoz, Azeri, and Turkmen. The Kipchak languages are Kazakh, Karakalpak, Nogay, Kyrgyz, Tatar, Bashkir, Crimean Tatar, Kumyk, Karachay, Balkar, and Karen. The Karluk languages are Uzbek and Uyghur. The Siberian languages are Yakut and Altai. In addition, there is Chuvash, a language which is regarded as the sole representative of the Uyghur group, also known as Bulgar or West Turkic, a branch which possibly split off before the beginning of the Common Era. At present this language is spoken in the autonomous Chuvash Republic within the Russian Federation in the Volga region. It forms, as it were, an enclave in the Kipchak area. Furthermore, Khalaj is spoken in central Iran, and this language is regarded as the sole remaining member of the Argu group and forms an enclave within the Oghuz group. Apart from Turkish, Gagauz, Moldavia, and Uyghur, Xinjiang, Western China, all these languages are mainly in use on the territory of the former Soviet Union. Around in 1992 in all newly formed republics the Cyrillic alphabet, as adopted after the Russian Revolution of 1917, was replaced by a Latin-based alphabet. All Turkic languages are thus genetically related, and despite their different and long developmental circumstances, it is small wonder that they still have a great number of structural features in common. Examples are 1. Agglutination. A common trait of Turkic languages is that words are inflected by agglutination. This entails that a whole series of suffixes can be added to nouns and verbs in order to specify factors such as number, possession, case, tense, and person. For example,
bahçelerimizdeydik.
2. Vowel harmony. This implies that a language has two types of vowel, each applicable in a specific domain. Compare the aforementioned
Bahçelerimizdeydik.
with
Balkonlarımızdaydık.
Now, we will talk about Turkish language.
The Turkish language belongs to the Oghuz branch of the Turkic language family. It has a very high degree of mutual intelligibility with Azerbaijani, Balkan Gagauz Turkish, Gagauz, and Kashkai, which are all members of the 30 Turkic languages. Turkish speakers constitute about 40% of all Turkic-speaking communities, making it the most widely spoken Turkic language in the world. This language is deemed official in Turkey, as well as the self-proclaimed Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Well, what languages have influenced the Turkish language? Let's talk about it briefly. Throughout the history of Turkey, the Turkish language experienced influences from European languages and from Arabic and Persian when Islam was embraced by Turks. Additionally, most medical, financial, and fashion-related terms were imported to Turkish from French. Ottoman Turkish, which is a variety of Turkish that was spoken by the Ottoman Empire from the 14th to the 20th century, went through an influx of Arabic and Persian. Other examples of Turkish words that come from Arabic are
Aile, din, insan, kalp, takvim, zaman.
Other terms that reflect the French influence in Turkish are
Kuaför, argo, tuvalet, ekran, banyo, ateş, hafta, taze.
are examples of traces of Persian and Turkish. Well, what languages has the Turkish language influenced? Turkic has lent world languages some terms that made their way via traders and soldiers from the Ottoman Empire. Most of these terms carry connotations related to ethnographical aspects. For example, the word coffee is said to be derived from the Turkish word kav, which is imported from the Arabic word kawa into Arabic from an African language. Well, what alphabet is used in Turkish? Let's mention it in a nutshell. The Ottoman Turkish alphabet, which is the Perso-Arabic alphabet, was used to write Turkish until 1928. Many Turks believed that the Arabic alphabet was not suited to representing some Turkish phonemes, making the language very hard to learn and use. Turkish has 8 vowels, while Arabic is not well equipped with vowels, and has a poor sound-letter correspondence. During the Ottoman Empire, literacy was considered for the elite of the country. However, the founder of Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, needed to revolutionize the country and cut ties with the Ottoman Empire, so he imposed the usage of the Latin alphabet. The new Turkey aimed to improve the life of the common people and educate them, so literacy and language simplicity was very important. Modern Turkish now uses the Latin alphabet with a few modified letters to meet the phonetic requirements of the language. Now, we will list the countries in which Turkish is spoken. Turkish is officially spoken mainly in Turkey and Cyprus. This rate is around 82 million. Although Turkish is not an official language in Azerbaijan, it is spoken as a second language by the people. In Syria and Iraq, Turkish is accepted as an official language in some cities. Lebanon has around 300,000 Turkish populations. Turkish is also spoken in this country. About 100,000 people in Greece, about 850,000 people in Bulgaria, and about 50,000 people in Romania speak Turkish. In some cities of Kosovo, Turkish is the official language. Turkish is spoken as a minority language in North Macedonia. Turkish is spoken in some cities of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The current population of Turkish Jews in Israel is estimated as about 100,000. Finally, we have also taught the Turkish language. Thank you so much for watching our first course. Stay tuned.